Welcome to When We Talk Podcast, a place where honest conversation happens. We talk about life, struggles in life, relationships, conflict in relationships. We even talk about faith. This episode is hosted by Kenneth Bonner, Reggie Smith, and Jacqueline Wells. Well, welcome again to When We Talk Podcast. This is Kenneth Bonner,
Reggie Smith,
and Jackie Wells. So today we are gonna be talking about sex. Yes, I said, fellas, we are gonna be talking about a relevant topic on today. So I just kind of want to take you guys back down memory lane. I know you guys remember when we were in high school, sex education. Abstinence was the main topics. Refrain from sex. If you want to have sex, you should use a condom. You should make sure you have all of the preparations. So I just kind of want to just talk through that on, how you guys felt about that when you guys first had your sexual encounter.
Wow. I'll let you go first, Reggie.
Well, let me step back for a minute because, we came from that generation of the birds and the bees.
Right.
And the birds and the bees never made sense to me because it was always a watered down version. And then when you tie that in with the church, as far as continuing to say what you can't do, the moment that you tell someone they can't do something or they're not supposed to do something, that's going to spark some type of interest. And so mine came from back in the day when we first got cable, and I was watching something that I had no business watching, and so it generated something because I'm like, well, what are they doing? It doesn't make any sense to me, So then talking amongst your friends who probably had started a little bit earlier than you did, you be like, well, you don't want to feel left out. So then you try it. So, that first time you do it and you get that feeling, and it's like a shark who senses blood in the water automatically goes into a frenzy. And now once you finally get a taste of that thing, now you continually want it. And because you wasn't properly told, or you were told, because back in the day we came in school, they were still having health and safety, and they talked about sex, but they didn't never really get down to the nitty gritty as to why you shouldn't be having it. Everything that comes along with it. They touched on some things, but it really didn't make sense. But after that first initial encounter, then it's almost like when Eve ate the fruit, her eyes was open.
Exactly.
And now your eyes are open. It's like, well, dang, I need to have this all the time.
Well, for me, it started at a young age too. And one of the things that springboarded that in my life was I got exposed to pornography at a young age. So then when you have a group of friends that's constantly having watching sex on TV, then they're coming back, like Reggie said, and having conversations about it, then you get that like, okay, man, I don't want to be left out. I need to know what this is that everybody's talking about, what everybody's doing, because, you don't want to feel like you're the loser in the group or the square, whatever the case. So after you have that first bite of the fruit, then it's just like, you stuck. And then you're like, wait a minute, I want more of the fruit. And then it just takes off from there.
I didn't have that experience, actually.
You're a woman, of course not.
I mean, so one experience that I had was in the 8th grade. I was dating a guy. And of course, at the time, I was able to go over his house. It was me and a couple friends. And that was really my first encounter with him trying to pressure me into having sex. And so of course at that time, I said, okay, kissing is good. Then that term, a little bit of on top of the clothes stuff, which ultimately leads you into that realm of allowing yourself to be vulnerable to having sex. I didn't have sex in the 8th grade, but I was open to being caught up in that realm of, okay, is this okay? But one of the things that continued to play back in my mind was, what would my parents think? And the struggles that will come with that, because we were involved. We dated for most of our middle school years. So I knew that I had some feeling there. I wouldn't say that I was in love with him because I really didn't know what true love was, but I knew that this is someone who really cared about me. But yet I was afraid to enter into that, to take that next step with him, especially being in the 8th grade, of course. So.
Well, I'm going to say I didn't even care about what my parents thought.
I didn't either.
I didn't care. I lost my virginity at 14 years old. But prior to that, I was getting ready to laugh because I had a situation where I was messing around with someone, and we were just, like you said, just kind of on top of each other, and I automatically thought she got pregnant. And let you know I didn't really know what was going on. Right. But like I said, once I got started, I just felt like I needed more. And then, sometimes being in the position that you are in school, you captain of the football team, captain of the track team, you're out there, it just comes. And then you really don't realize how much damage you're actually doing to yourself. Right. Because at that point in time, you're just living in the moment.
Right.
You're skipping. I mean, thank God with all the stuff I got into, I never caught a disease, because honestly, I didn't practice safe sex.
Right.
And that's bad, right. But I didn't, even though it was out there, you got condoms and everything out there, I didn't. I was just living in the moment. But I didn't care about what my parents thought. I didn't care about what anybody thought. I was just out to get mine. And so I walked around with this badge of honor on my chest. But I think it was a question that was posed that came through. And the question was, or the statement was, not having sex before marriage still exists. It just requires the boundaries and standards most people are not afraid to set. I really don't understand that. So we can talk about that, because I believe that once you do have sex, you've already crossed boundaries already. So let's talk about that.
So read that again for me.
So it says, someone asked to talk about this, is not having sex before marriage still exists. It just requires the boundaries and standards most people are too afraid to set.
So what I believe is that a lot of people do have standards and morals, and they believe not having sex. Some people try to remain celibate. Like, for instance, you could take a couple superstars. Was it not Russell Westbrook, but Sierra and her husband, the football player?
Russell Wilson.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so they remained celibate before they got married. Mm-hmm. And a large part of that was based on their faith. So I think you find that more with people who are faith-based, to where they practice the celibacy before marriage. Now, is it difficult? Is it challenging? Once you've tasted the fruit, then yes, it's definitely difficult and challenge. And then too, you have some people that's just lost in it, and they don't believe in, why do we got to wait till we get married? We had already had sex. I done already lost my virginity. You lost yours. So what's the whole purpose in trying to remain pure after you done already crossed that boundary prior?
Well, from a woman perspective, I think too is there's no guarantees in relationships. And I feel that personally, when you open up yourself to have sex with somebody else, you become vulnerable, and it could be a mind-changing experience for you as well, because now you're not only mentally tied to that person, you're physically tied to that person. So I do believe, even though I didn't refrain from sex before I got married. That's just me being completely honest. However, I believe, where this person was going is we do need to have some boundaries set on why you shouldn't have sex with a person before you get married.
Well, you said physically and what else?
Mentally.
Spiritually. But spiritually also, it's it can be very, very detrimental in a relationship. So as we talk about the spiritual aspect of it, and what a lot of people do not understand or recognize, is that every time you lay down with someone, all right, you're forming what they call a soul tie. Mm-hmm. Okay. So every encounter, it builds that bond even stronger and stronger. So then you go out and have sex with another person and another person and another person. You are now knitting your souls together. And you always want to look at it like a big ball of yarn. Okay, well, you start off with a string, and then when that string continues to get entangled, it's almost impossible to get those strings, those various strings untangled, because now you have a big knot. So picture yourself starting off with a small string, you and this one person, right? You got a string. Now you have multiple people upon multiple people, and now the string gets into a knot that makes it almost impossible and hard to untangle. So once you have those soul ties, it's hard to break. So once you've moved on, now 10, 15 years later, now all of a sudden a thought pops up in your head, or all of a sudden you catch a smell, because we're operated by our five senses. You catch a smell, or a certain song, or a certain voice, or that person might pop up out the blue. Right. Hey, something, I was thinking about you. No, that's not just a casual happenstance or occurrence. There's still some soul ties that's tied into that, because why you all the way in China and I'm all the way here in the United States and you still thinking thinking about me 25 years ago.
Right.
You have formed soul ties. Now, there are healthy soul ties and there are unhealthy or unholy soul ties. But that's something we can go into a little bit later.
But soul ties, it goes even further than sex.
Yeah.
But the funny thing that you say about that is when you're tied to somebody via sex, when you look at what the scripture says about how they consummated marriage, it was through sex. So once you lay down, biblical days, when you lay down with somebody and have sex with them, you're considered married. So now you have people just out here roaming freely, having sex with everybody, and they're wondering why they have all these different emotions, all these different attitudes, and just it's a whole another slew of things that come with just sleeping around with folks. And so, boundaries definitely do need to be in place, but I don't think that people respect boundaries anymore because they don't see the value in folks.
And not only do they not respect boundaries, I think they have that unknown factor of, I wonder if this is going to be the person that I spend the rest of my life with and if it's going to be worth it. You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, sex is supposed to be a pleasurable thing between a married couple, between a husband and a wife. And so, I know that we have people that's listening in that's not married, who might have the question, okay, so why can't I have sex? Why is it a problem with me not being able to share that if I believe that this is the person that I'm going to be with? So my question is, what do you guys think we should say to people that are listening that are single, as a way to say, okay, do you think that you should or you shouldn't?
Well, I would say this is that there are a number of things that kind of play a factor into that. One, you get unplanned pregnancies.
Yeah.
You wind up having babies with someone you had no intention on building a future with because at that moment or point in time, you were just thinking about just kicking it.
Right.
But now you have an unplanned pregnancy, and now it ties you to this person that you never saw a future with.
Right.
One night stand. Let's use one night stands. A lot of people are into these one night stand things. You're not thinking anything past that night.
Right.
But now you get pregnant. Now that night has turned into 18 or 22 years that you have to be with this person that you really didn't have any plans or intentions on being with. The next thing is transmitted diseases. All right? Today's generation, I don't know what it is about them. They do not believe in hygiene. Okay? They don't wash. They don't take care of their bodies like they used to. And what's happening is that these young men are running in between these other girls within a day. They're not taking care of themselves, so they're transmitting these bodily fluids between each other. The next thing is,
hold on 1 second. Wait. I'm sorry. You said hygiene. They don't wash themselves.
They don't wash.
Oh, wow.
You'd be surprised. Working in the system out here, I run across these young males who don't take showers. They take showers every 2 or 3 days. But in between those every 2 or 3 days, they're still having sex with these females.
But you can't smell yourself?
They don't care.
Oh, come on.
They don't care. But here's the thing. When you're hiding and you're in the heat of passion, sometimes all they're thinking about is just that one thing. They're not really taking care of anything. Okay. The next thing is you risk identity issues. Okay. The next thing is eventually, if you haven't noticed it yet, you will fall into some state of depression.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And also broken relationships.
Yeah.
Broken relationship after broken relationship after broken relationship will lead to that aspect of depression.
But when you think about this, though, bro, when you talk about broken relationships, there are a lot of people that only have sexual relationships. Yeah. There's no other expectation but just to lay down with you. We call it friends with benefits.
Right.
Right. So to me, I just think that, we have to value ourselves a little bit more than that, because if I'm giving everything I am to everybody that comes along, then I find Mr. or Mrs. Right, whether you're male or female, then what do you have that's sacred to give to that person? Because you gave it to everybody already. That's disgusting. And I'm still trying to digest what you just said about people not taking baths, because, I have to take a couple showers a day, bro. And that's just being honest. I just don't, that's disgusting. I'm sorry.
It is. I mean, but that's the nature of the beast. In today's generation, like I said, they're living for the moment. And if you get that call at 1 o'clock in the afternoon from this chick you're trying to get with, and then next thing you know, you get another call at 4 o'clock. I'm just saying, I've seen this happen. They just running in between. They might use some wet wipes. I've seen that too. I'm not lying. They might use some wet wipes and bam, go off to the next encounter.
Let me say this one thing. How are you gonna wash your car but you don't wash your tail?
Hey, that's just how they do, man. I've seen it, and I'm not just speaking. I have dealt with guys who do that. This younger generation dealing with, and that's what they do.
Well, as a woman, we gonna have a quick wash. You know, I mean, we gonna go freshen up quickly. You know, it might not be as thorough, but I mean, hey, I've you know, did you guys see Mary Jane when they first premiered Mary Jane?
Yeah.
Her first encounter with the guy that she was dating. Right after work, she went to the bathroom and had a quick wash.
But see, that quick wash doesn't really get up inside those areas, and then you go lay down with another man. You're just touching. I'm sorry, what they call it, a whole bath?
That's what they call it.
Yeah.
You said it.
Sorry, but you're just touching on the outside, and then next thing you know, you prepare for the next encounter.
Wow.
It doesn't really change anything. It's really no difference. I'm sorry.
We just took the show from a PG show to a rated R show. You know,
But it's needed. I mean, I
But it's
think it's
needed.
healthy.
I
I think
agree.
it's healthy conversation because I mean, right now, you know, people. That's the topic, and social. It's all over the internet. Sex kill. You know, not sex kills, but you know,
it can kill.
Well, it can. Actually, it
get
can.
something.
It can.
Syphilis, gonorrhea,
HIV.
chlamydia,
Yeah.
HIV,
Herpes.
You know, herpes.
Yeah.
You know, but I think that, you know, at some point, again, like we were talking about earlier, that we have to set boundaries.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Because now I look at some of the people on social media, and now we have 10 kids from 10 different women. I understand you may make a couple of mistakes, you may get in different relationships, but when you have 10 kids from 10 different women, then something's wrong.
Yeah.
You know, we have a very broken society right now. And again, when you see sex the way it's portrayed on TV,
Yeah.
sex the way it's portrayed in videos, and how sex is the thing, then we go around from partner to partner looking for the next best thing, you know,
Right.
versus looking for somebody to wife or somebody to marry. You know, people are not looking for that anymore. You know, what boundaries? What's the sense of it? If I can have sex with you before we get married, then why would I want to tie myself down in a relationship with you? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, I always, you know, as a parent, you know, I always try to coach or, you know, teach my children about the importance of abstaining from sex. And I say that with all of the experiences that I've been through in my life, from the damage that it caused me from having sex before getting married. And I can just quickly tell you, my daughter just went through she went through a breakup last year. And, you know, she used to be afraid to come talk to me, you know, especially when she had her first sexual encounter. But when I saw how broken she was behind that situation, it did something to me.
Right.
You know, and so of course we don't want to see our kids hurt. So I think it's important that we do let them know you do have something on the inside of you that's valuable. You know, when you open yourself up to somebody else, it does take away something from you. And I think that we have to focus on, you know, God designed sex to be between a husband and a wife. So I think it's important for you to cherish those things that you have on the inside of you as a woman and a man too. I don't think it's just from a woman perspective.
Right.
I think it's important for men to do the same.
So here's my thing, and this just came to me. Do you think a lot of women and maybe even men have multiple partners because they feel some sense of or lack of worth, or they don't know their value, or they sleep with folks because, you know, they're just trying to be accepted?
If I could speak for some of the men, I think a lot of that ties in with our insecurities.
I agree.
I also think a lot of it ties in with the male macho thing that we carry and our ego. So and men are driven by ego. That's plain and simple. We're driven by our ego. But we a lot of us we don't want to admit it. But if I sit back and think about my past, a lot of it was driven around my idiosyncrasies or my insecurities, because I was always trying to appear to be better or better than what I was, especially if I came out of a bad relationship. So we were all in that divide and conquer type situation, thinking that this new encounter would help me feel better about my self-worth.
Or help me heal.
Yeah, it would help me heal. But the only thing was, it was just creating more damage.
Right.
And I want to say this. Have you ever noticed that when you and it's just like when you're married, you begin on to take on the characteristics of your partner. You know, you guys think alike, say the same exact thing.
Yeah.
But have you noticed, if you ever sit back and you start thinking that, you look back over your several encounters, you start to even pick up characteristics from them. All of a sudden, you're angry for no reason, or you're lazy, or you're depressed for some reason, because the more and more you get tied in with this person, you literally begin to take on their characteristics, and you don't even know. You be like, why am I so lazy nowadays? You know what I'm saying? Because it is a spiritual thing.
But it goes back to the soul ties.
It goes back to the soul ties, because now you've developed the soul ties, and every time you've laid down with that person, you made the topic of about you're taking away something from them. So as they're depositing, you're receiving. It's a deposit and receiving thing going on all the time. And all of a sudden you take on those characteristics, and you can tell you've been with your spouse for a long period of time. You finish each other's sentences.
Exactly.
Y'all think alike. Right. After a while, you start to look alike, you know, and different things like that. So yeah, it can go a number of different ways.
So we talked a lot about soul ties. We talked about the past, and we know we all had those sexual encounters in the past. And I'm not perfect. I've had sex before marriage. I have kids out of wedlock. I've done that before. But I don't think people really understand the fact of soul ties and how they're tied to people through sexual encounters as well as other things. So my question to you both would be, what would you all say is the best way to break those soul ties?
Prayer. I mean, of course, if you have a soul tie connected to somebody else, you can solely rely on the word of God to help navigate you through that process. Right. You know, and of course, I'm not opposed to counseling either, because a lot of times we do need someone to counsel us, to help us deal with those demons. I'm gonna call it demons that, you know, of the thing of our past. You know, we can get stuck in our past that cause us to be stagnant from moving forward. Right. You know, so prayer for me always works. And so that would be one of the main things that I would say would help a person, you know, move past being connected to any soul ties from there, especially if it's negative.
I would say prayer too, but also with that prayer, you have to, like the Bible says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Correct. You have to have a renewed mindset. Yeah. And you have to want to turn away from that thing and distance yourself from that thing if at all possible, because distance doesn't always help. You could be anywhere, and that soul tie can still make that connection. But I would only say prayer, and it has to be a renewal and a transformation of your mind.
I would agree with you both. I would say prayer, as well as receiving the grace that God has given us all, because it's not something that you can say, oh, I want to stop and quit, and then you all of a sudden stop and quit, and then you're good. You know, we know that there's scripture that tells us, give me 1 second. So I'm going to read the scripture out of 1 Corinthians 6:18-20. It says, flee fornication. Every sin that a man doeth is without the body, but he that committeth fornication sinneth against his own body. So I think that even through prayer and understanding that when you're sinning or having sex, you're sinning against your own body. When you think about the consequences of what comes after sex, like we talked about, could be unwanted pregnancies, or you think about sexual transmitted diseases. You get an unwanted pregnancy, now you're contemplating on whether you're going to have this baby or whether you're going to go get an abortion. You know, so you have to keep those things in mind and really position yourself to receive the grace to be able to come out of those things that first of all, it's not good for you to do anyway, because you don't want to just keep giving yourself to anybody because it's the thing to do. You need to have some kind of standard for yourself, some kind of moral for yourself, and commit yourself to that person that you feel led that you're supposed to be with for the rest of your life, if that makes sense. And
I think intimacy is important too. You know, it shouldn't always be solely based on sex. And I think that's probably where people, get it confused. You don't have to, for me to be intimate with you, it could just be us cuddling on the couch, or, me pouring my heart out to you and let you know how I feel, versus us going straight to the bedroom. Right. So I think intimacy is key too, versus just looking at, we got to have sex.
Well, let me say this. Cuddling can be dangerous too. And here's why I say cuddling can be dangerous too, because from the scientific aspect, there's a chemical that's released called oxytocin. Oxytocin is that natural chemical that bonds the woman to that child. Okay, so the moment that baby is born, the woman holds that baby up to her cheek. There's a chemical that's being released between the two of them that bonds them together. Now, also in the male hormone, it's called the vasopressin. It's similar to the oxytocin, and that's released from the man, and it bonds the man to the woman. So every time that there's a bond between them, those chemicals are being released, and it naturally and spiritually bonds you all together, because our bodies are made up of chemicals anyway. Right. So every time I touch you, and it causes that arousal, along with the endorphins that's released, which is the happy chemical, it creates an array of emotions. But the oxytocin and the vasopressin is what bonds you together. So that's why I say, because even when you're cuddling, depending on how you're cuddling, you're releasing chemicals.
Okay, well, I guess then we should learn sign language then.
Right, exactly. There's no chemicals released in that,
Right.
you know. So,
Well, I think though that it'd be a whole lot of chemicals going on.
exactly. It's a dangerous game. You know, it's very dangerous, and a lot of us go into it not knowing because we're ignorant of how the body actually operates. We don't really
Yeah.
know. We didn't know at a young age how
No, we
our
didn't.
bodies operate. But I think our thing is to make sure, because we've all done it. We've all had sex before marriage,
Right.
and we all thought that it was great, not knowing the detriment that it would cause later on down the line. But we are just trying to make sure, like we've told our kids, not to make the same mistakes
Right.
that we made, because we didn't have the ability to look in the future. But now we're living in we're talking about our past to help prepare them for the future, because the stuff that we went through was very detrimental. It caused us so many
It
issues
did.
and heartache,
Yeah.
and you didn't realize until you got into your late 20s and 30s how damaged and broken you were, because you got in these bad relationships, especially
Right.
sexual, that tied you to people you had no business being with.
Right.
And I think that too, we got to respect sex. Period. Just respect it. You know, for if you don't respect it, then you won't understand the purpose of it. And the whole purpose that it was created for in the beginning was to be fruitful and multiply. Now you are supposed to have some pleasure between a husband and
Yeah.
wife, because that's
Right.
how it's written. But I think when we respect that more, then we won't just again keep going around here like we tell our children. You can't go around and just keep giving yourself and just to everybody. You know, and I'm going to keep saying that because you know I want my kids and anybody listening. You know, a lot of and the sad part about this is that there are a lot of Christians who struggle with being abstinent from sex, but they don't want to tell nobody. You know, they don't want to say that I honestly am struggling with these things. Be honest, confess it. You know, if you confess it to somebody, let somebody pray for you, but don't confess it to somebody that you're attracted to.
Or they call shacking. It's
Exactly.
okay for us to shack.
Exactly. You know, so it's a whole nother conversation. But I do think that marriage and the confounds of marriage is probably something that we're gonna have to talk about.
Definitely.
You know, because you know I don't think that a lot of people understand. You know, the bedroom is not defiled type deal. So we're gonna have to pick that up in another conversation.
That'd be a good
Another
one.
conversation. 'Cause
Let me say this though, we also have to realize that every time we break that bond, we lose the ability to bond with the right person.
Right.
So those bonds are constantly
Yeah.
being broken. They're always being broken with these different relationships. So now you get in a new relationship, it's almost hard to bond because this pattern has continued to go on. So, you know, you have to make sure and be wise in who you get with.
Right.
Right. And when you say that, you know, this is what I'm thinking that, like you say, you have to battle, you know what I'm saying? You battle with the person that you're trying to get with, especially as well as those soul ties that you have. So now the person of who you were in the past is battling with the person that you're trying to get with, and you don't understand why you having conflict. But the conflict is because of what you did in the past and who you've been tied to.
Yeah, my final thoughts would just be to wait. I would just say wait it out. Is so much more worth it when you are with that other person and you know that you're going to be with them forever. It's worth the wait.
Yeah, it's definitely worth the wait because sex and marriage is so
It's a
much
great
greater
thing.
than. I mean, I can't even finish my sentence. We know who enjoys it in marriage. Reggie sitting here silent, but this is definitely a great talk, great conversation. We will have to pick this conversation up again. Thank you again for listening, for tuning in. You can find us on Google Play. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can search us by When We Talk or When We Talk Podcast.com, and our website is whenwetalk.net. When you get a chance, go check out our blogs. Again, until next time, keep your head up.
Keep God first.
And keep it moving.